Hello humans of the world, I'm Dawn of the World, welcome aboard. Just a fairly quick one this week. This chapter in multiple ways kind of felt like a closing chapter, despite the expectations of many as to where Wano should be at this point in the story. I myself, just a week ago, due to my own expectations of where the arc was headed based on prior happenings, was still expecting Act 4 and Act 5. As to where I currently stand on that, based on recent news, I'll get into that later. But for now, I'll share my general thoughts on the chapter. Of course, it's always exciting to have a strong start in Marie-Joie with a bunch of old guys discussing politics. The thing that stood out to me in particular was how they said that the timing could not be worse for the falling of two emperors. We keep being given these crumbs, these morsels, these nods to the fact that something big happened at Reverie. Something that we're still unaware of, but I think we are on the cusp of finding out. Like possibly even in the next chapter, since Apu dropped that paper to Kid. A paper containing the information of the new bounties, the new warlords, and will in all likeliness reference whatever occurred at the Reverie. So our final scene from the raid, or shortly post-raid rather, seems to be focused on Hawkins and Drake, of course, and it looks as though Hawkins is our first supernova to have carked it. Rest in pieces, buddy. I mean, this death wasn't 100% clear, but I feel like it didn't really need to be. I'm 99% sure he's dead. Get it? Because he was the 1% man, just like 1% milk. And just like 1% milk, I think he's probably not alive. He's probably dead. Who I'm wondering about though is Drake, who I'm 99% sure is not dead, and 100% sure I'm wondering what he's up to now, since we don't see him later in the chapter. Like, I'm sure he was probably helped at some point by some medical individual due to the bleeding and that, after which I would normally suggest he then went on his merry way, but since he is in Wano, which is notoriously hard to get into and get out of, and none of his marine per se are on site, so I feel like he's still in Wano somewhere. So I'm now wondering what he's been doing this past week and what his next move might be. The Straw Hats would at least be able to inform that he was no longer sided with Kaido, but I still don't feel like the people of Wano would take to him too kindly after he wrecked their shit that time. Going a bit off topic here, but have any of you ever thought about how easy it would have been for Drake to join the Beast Pirates? It would have been so easy. All he needed to do was to go up to Kaido like, hey, I'm a dinosaur. And Kaido would have been like, fuck yeah, that's the spirit, man, you're in. Like, my dude was perfectly qualified for that crew. Anyway, the thing is that now various individuals, including Apu, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, now know that Drake was an undercover marine. So it's very likely that Drake's long-term mission of posing as a pirate could be over, and he is all but about to be slid back into the sheath of sword, who I am also eager to learn more about. Anyway, on the topic of death and dying, we also found out in this chapter that Ashura and Izo have passed away during the raid, which is quite sad, and we don't really see a reaction from Kiku regarding her brother's death. I guess it's because a week has passed, the feeling isn't as raw. She would still be in mourning, but she's also come to a place of acceptance of her brother's passing as a samurai in the battle, but it would be nice to see her visit his grave before the arc ends. On that note, I also would have liked to have seen Kinemon reunite with Otsuru, which I'm sure should have happened by now off screen, but anyway. I find it interesting that this was the final panel of that particular scene. Like, it doesn't feel that hopeful is the word I'm looking for. In fact, Kinemon saying that he doesn't think he could take it if something were to happen to any more of their heroes kind of feels foreboding. Or maybe that's just my copium kicking in for want of a parts 4 and 5. To be clear, I'm not wanting Kaido to crawl up out of the Earth's crust and continue fighting, although I do reckon he's still alive. I'm just wanting a few more plot points to wrap before we continue, such as those concerning Zoro, which may well be on the horizon. And you know who's also on the horizon? A certain Admiral Greenbull. And if Greenbull is Ushimaru, and if Ushimaru is related to Zoro, both turn out to be true, then these plot points may be set into action. Though Greenbull heading to Wano in and of itself feels cause for us to stay there for longer than one more chapter, even if the saga itself changes while we're here. As for Zoro anyway, I feel like there's definitely some important plot points coming up in the future for him. The Grim Reaper for one thing, like what would the point of that be if it were not to serve a greater purpose later on? Also, I think that it's worth noting that when Zoro said to Sanji, "I have returned from hell to fulfill my promise to kill you," while this does feel like jest in the moment, it also kind of conjures up this image for me of Zoro visiting the underworld, which is a place that exists, and it would be interesting if that is followed up at some point. Like, Brook's already been there, maybe Zoro could chat with him. Another major question that I have for this chapter though is, where's Robin? She's absent from every scene you'd expect to see her in. She's not in the dining hall, she's not present in the fun bathhouse scene, she doesn't even seem to be down at the harbour with Frankie and Usopp. Side note, I like how those two are working together as usual, and how they helped repair Law and Kid ships. And Robin is still on the forefront of conversation between the Gorosei and CP0. From what I gather, the Gorosei think that she's captured, and that she's going to be brought to them. And this Sunflower CP0 dude is blatantly lying, which is probably not allowed. You could get in very big trouble for this, Sunflower man. My guess is that Robin has spent this chapter looking at the Wano poneglyph, or possibly even looking for information on poneglyphs in general, since they're said to have originated from Wano country. It is also where Seastone is from originally, so I wonder if those two are connected in any way, and also if Frankie perhaps has taken the liberty to coat the underside of the Sunny's hull in Seastone to make transition through the Calm Belt doable if ever needed. With all of this in mind, as well as Green Bull on the way, I feel like we need to stay in Wano for a bit longer than just one more chapter. I'm leaning less towards Wano having 5 acts now, simply because the announcement from the other day saying that after this upcoming month break, Oda will be commencing his final saga. While this final saga could do something quite obscure by beginning in Wano and allowing acts 4 and 5 to quickly play out, I'm kind of doubting that. Again, it would feel a bit like copium to fully expect it, but we'll wait for the next chapter to play out to be able to see. One of the reasons I've been anticipating acts 4 and 5 is because in the event that we don't get them, and Wano is a 3-act story, then the 3 acts have been really weirdly spaced. All stories, not just Wano, not just One Piece, tend to go by a 3-act structure or a 5-act structure. So let's look at Wano through the lens of a 3-act structure, which is what the story might have become. If Wano is 3 acts and we're leaving in a chapter or 2, then the 3 acts should have been spaced differently to what they were. Act 1 should have covered from the opening to them setting out for Onigashima. Act 2 should have covered from the start of the Onigashima shenanigans up until Luffy's apparent death and the cliffhanger of the Joy Boy awakening. And then Act 3 should have covered from Joy Boy awakening up until the final scene, or something a bit more along those lines. At this point, it can only be leveled out if it did become a 4 or 5 act story for them to properly be able to balance those out. But that remains to be seen, and various external factors indicate that we are likely leaving Wano very soon. And my camera has just died before I could give my closing line, so I'm going to have to do this final part faceless. As usual, let me know what you guys thought of the chapter below. I'm Dawn of the World, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.